The difference is a single cent. Most people think they understand this trick. Marketing, psychology, the left digit. Usually the explanation ends there. It seems obvious. A clever price tag, a simple gimmick, a familiar retail tool. We've seen it hundreds of times, in stores, in apps, in subscriptions. We assume the effect has long been exposed and neutralized. But if it's that simple, why does it keep working even when we know about it? Why doesn't awareness reduce its influence? Why do even those who can explain the effect still feel a difference between $9.99 and $10? Right now, you think it's just clever marketing. In a few minutes, it will become clear that it's not about the number 9 at all. It's about the structure of comparison. It's about how the brain assigns objects to scale brackets, and it is this structure that changes the speed of your decision. The price barely moves. What shifts is the way it occupies space on your internal scale.
Math is precise, but the perception of a number is biological. When you see a price, the brain doesn't calculate, it scans. A number is first perceived as a visual form, not an arithmetic statement. We read from left to right, and in the brief moment when your gaze touches the first digit, a preliminary scale is formed. This isn't calculation yet, it's classification. $9.99 is perceived as 9. $10 is perceived as 10. The cents are processed later, if at all. They exist in a zone of secondary attention. The primary assessment has already been made before the decimal point is even reached. This is known as the left digit bias, but the label is secondary. What matters is that the first digit defines the price bracket. Everything that follows is treated as refinement within that bracket. The difference between 9 and 10 isn't 1 cent, it's a shift in scale tier. Within the same tier, the price feels close. Crossing into the next tier makes it feel higher, even when the arithmetic difference is minimal.
Compare $9.99 and $10.01. The physical difference is 2 cents. Psychologically, they belong to different bands. 10 marks a new threshold. It is a double-digit number, and double digits signal a new level of scale. The brain doesn't register plus 2 cents, it registers a boundary crossed. When the price drops below that threshold by a single cent, the product moves back into the previous bracket. It's no longer above 10, it's under 10. That is a different mental shelf. And within that shelf, different comparison rules apply. Items in the same bracket feel closer and are evaluated faster. We aren't changing the sum, we're changing the mental slot where the brain stores the object. Along with that slot, the evaluation strategy shifts. Staying within a bracket allows the brain to avoid recalibrating scale. Moving up requires adjustment. The $9.99 format prevents that recalibration from happening.
Why does the brain ignore the 0.99 so easily? Because it conserves energy. Processing a number in full requires more effort than reading its first digit. This isn't laziness, it's prioritization. The brain aims to gather sufficient information as quickly as possible. The first digit already establishes the range. For rapid orientation, that is enough. The first digit carries most of the signal about the scale of the expense. What follows is treated as adjustment within the selected bracket. The fractional part isn't completely ignored, it simply receives lower processing priority. In an environment saturated with products, banners, and offers, the brain adopts a minimal effort strategy. It locks on to whatever provides a reference point fastest. The left digit becomes the anchor of scale. The cents turn into secondary noise, a detail that rarely overrides the initial classification. When the environment demands speed, this strategy dominates. In digital space, this effect intensifies. You're not standing in front of a shelf, you're scrolling. There is no pause for reflection, there is motion. Decisions happen within a continuous stream. Every product card competes for fractions of a second.
Under the pressure of an infinite feed, the brain shifts to autopilot more often. It does not optimize for precision, it optimizes for speed. 999 is perceived as 9 because only the primary signal has time to register. Your gaze may never fully process the decimals. Visual hierarchy strengthens this bias. The 9 is large and high contrast. The cents are smaller, lighter, or raised. The interface distributes attention deliberately so that the first digit dominates. You aren't forced to calculate. You're simply given no reason to slow down. The decision accelerates because the environment is engineered for velocity.
Look closely at a price tag. It's not just a number, it's a structure. Cents are often shifted to superscript. The currency symbol is minimized. The first digit dominates in size and contrast. This isn't aesthetic preference, it's attention hierarchy. The left side becomes the visual center of gravity, the right side recedes. Size, weight, spacing, each element reinforces the dominance of the first digit. If 999 were written in plain, uniform text without emphasis, the effect would weaken. The price would be processed more as a whole number rather than as a bracket defined by 9. Remove hierarchy, and the brain must compute more carefully. But interfaces rarely present prices in neutral mathematical form. The number is structured internally so that one element carries more visual weight than the rest. This redistribution isn't decorative, it is directional, and the first digit almost always wins.
It's essential to understand $9.99 doesn't make a product cheaper. It alters the comparison structure. The monetary difference is negligible, but the reference point shifts. Seeing a 9 instead of a 10 shortens the perceived distance to purchase. The threshold feels lower because the price remains within a familiar band. The alternative, "I'll think about it," loses strength. The decision feels contained within the current bracket, rather than requiring entry into a higher one. This is structural compression. The number doesn't shrink. The psychological space between hesitation and action does. The price stays nearly the same. The weight of the decision changes. Reducing perceived scale reduces internal resistance, and when resistance decreases, the choice accelerates, even though the arithmetic barely moves.
Imagine you've added a $9.99 item to your cart. The decision feels nearly complete. Now mentally replace the price with $10. The product hasn't changed. The specifications are identical. The shipping remains the same. The difference is 1 cent, but the feeling shifts. A micropause appears, a subtle recalibration, not because the amount increased meaningfully, but because the scale bracket changed. The 9 keeps the price within a familiar band. The 10 moves it to the next tier. This is where the mechanism operates. 1 cent does not affect your budget, but changing the first digit changes the classification, and classification influences behavior faster than arithmetic. First, the internal label shifts, then the decision follows. How do you weaken this effect? Start rounding up. When you see $9.99, say 10. Do it before you decide. This forces the number out of visual mode and into arithmetic mode. You compel the brain to process the whole amount instead of relying on the first digit. Second, focus on the complete cost, not the magnitude bracket. Avoid 9 and something. See the full figure. Third, compare the price not to the previous integer, but to your budget or to the product's actual value. This shifts the reference frame. As soon as you stop seeing 9 and start seeing almost 10, the comparison structure realigns, the bracket resets, the autopilot weakens, the decision returns to deliberate evaluation.
The number 9 doesn't make a product cheaper. It makes perception shorter.
The price barely changes, but the psychological distance to action compresses. In digital environments, numbers are not neutral data. They are navigational tools for attention and classification. When you see 9.99, you're not seeing savings. You're seeing a bracket. Under 10, not 10 and above. The price remains almost identical. The structure of comparison changes. See the mechanism.